While dairy prices rebound sharply thanks to farmers quickly adjusting milk production while consumers boost their retail demand. Government purchase also kicked in to help offset lost food service sales. Well, Bjerga with the National Milk Producers Federation joins us now for a further look at the industry in this current time. Alan, as always, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. So what type of cutback in milk production has there been? And of course, how has this impacted the effort to recover on prices?
Well, this is something worth noting, Janet, because when you take a look at the factors behind this recovery we've seen in prices, one thing that doesn't get mentioned as much is the role that farmers themselves played. When you were heading into 2020, you saw a pretty robust forecast for milk prices for this year, the highest since 2014, but it was coming down a little bit because dairy farmers did what they always do. You know, they started raising production to chase that dollar. When coronavirus hit, what you essentially saw was farmers put the brakes on production, and you saw a decline in production year over year. This is something that normally takes about 3 years for the market to work through. When within 2 months, you went from a year-over-year monthly gain of almost 3% to a 1% decline from the previous year's production in May. This is a pretty dramatic cutoff, and it's because dairy cooperatives stepped up. You know, cooperatives handle about 85% of the nation's milk, and those cooperatives, you know, basically worked with farmers and finding ways to make sure that production was reduced to put forth a market rebound, which every dairy farmer has been benefiting from in recent weeks.
Can you bring us up to speed, of course, also on the annual average milk prices and what the forecast now looks like as we move forward?
Yeah, we're seeing forecasts now for the rest of the year rising above $18 a hundredweight. Now, look, this isn't 2021, you know, $20 or $21 per hundredweight like what we were seeing for forecasts at the end of last year. But margins are getting healthy again. You're seeing some pretty good reports of some solid support for milk prices, and in part because you're seeing rebounds in cheese and butter and other markets that are supported by the food sector, service sector. You add that in with some timely federal purchases and some federal assistance, and for a lot of dairy farmers, what looked like a very dark time has a little bit of light now at the end of the tunnel. Got to put a big asterisk on everything. We don't know what the new normal is going to look like, but for dairy, there's a lot more reason for optimism than there was just a few weeks ago.
Alan, what about the annual growth in U.S. milk production? What trends are you seeing there?
Well, again, you know, we're seeing this really rapid throttling. A lot of farmers went from 3 milkings a day to 2 milkings a day. You saw changes in feed rations that deal with, you know, productivity per cow. Now, the question in the next few months is how lasting of an effect is this? If it turns out that farmers can turn off the switch this quickly, can they turn the switch back on? And what will they do for prices? Farmers should be pretty mindful about this dynamic in the next few months, and it may be a steady as she goes before the tap just turns back wide open again.
Alan, prior to COVID-19, of course, we heard a lot of dairy closures taking place. Have you seen an uptick in that happen since this whole situation started?
You know, 2019 was a challenging year for dairy farm closures, and since the price environment improved, that was a bit of a disappointment. I wouldn't expect what's happened in the last few weeks to arrest a generations-long trend toward dairy consolidation. What we do know now, though, is that if a dairy farm consolidates, it's probably going to be more likely for the traditional reasons. You know, somebody sells out because they're funding their retirement. Somebody decides to try something different in the agricultural arena, rather than this automatic shakeout by forces that seemed beyond farmers' control that we were seeing in COVID-19. You know, there were some folks who were wondering if dairy was simply going to disappear in some more expensive parts of the country. You've heard those concerns ebbing a little bit now. Our new normal is looking more like the old normal than we thought it was going to be in March and April.
All right. Well, Alan, as always, thank you very much for your insight this morning. Alan Bjerga, he's with the National Milk Producers Federation, on the phone with us today from Washington, D.C.